first of all, understanding, the current landscape of what our healthcare looks like for individuals who aren't necessarily in healthcare, wanting to seek advice, wanting to seek treatment. At the moment, yes, we pride ourselves in, the fact that our NHS is so diverse, but this is something that I always mention. The diversity isn't across the board. It's not at the top where, you have individuals that are supposed to make important decisions that will stop some of the sad things that we hear continuing.
Hello, everyone. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're looking after yourselves. Hope you are enjoying the weather. At this moment in time we're recording, it's in September and it's very cold. We're wrapping up warm. That's why I'm in a jumper today. But yeah, I guess we first want to start off by saying things. We want to say, congratulations and welcome to season 5 of Pick Up the Mic. It's crazy to think that we're on our 5th season already. But as we always say, we've got amazing guest speakers and amazing topics for you for this season. And what better way to start than with our guest speaker today? But as I keep on mentioning, I don't like to personally, read off the description about the person because I will never do the person justice. I won't be as authentic as the individual themselves. So I'm going to hand over to our guest speaker today. Could you please introduce yourself and let our audience know a bit more about you?
Sure. First of all, thank you so much for having me on your podcast, Jeffrey. My name is Dr. Khadija Owusu. I am currently a junior doctor practicing in the UK. But aside that, I am a sister. I'm the eldest of 3. I'm also a daughter, amongst many other sort of names or titles. But I also do quite a bit of work outside of that. Generally, I'm actually quite bad at introducing myself in person, to be honest. So in my head, I was thinking, oh my gosh, just read it out. But where do I begin? So I am the founder of the Like Her project in Ghana. I'm also one of the founding members and the director of programs for Melanin Medics, which is a UK charity here. I also serve as a board member for the Equality and Diversity panel at my old secondary school, Elizabeth Garrett Anderson School, as well as a trustee and an ambassador for a few other international organizations. But amongst those hats that I wear, I'm also a speaker, an international as well as TEDx speaker.
Thank you very much for that amazing introduction. And I'm sure our audience can already guess from the many titles that you said you hold. This is going to be a very interesting and a very amazing episode. So we're going to kick things off with our first official question. And essentially, we would like to know what inspired you to become a doctor. Was this always a part of your dream? Was this your passion? Or was this something that sort of developed after time?
Yeah, so what inspired me to become a doctor? I think several factors, but it's always been something that I've always wanted to do from since I was very young. Growing up, I have a younger brother called who has sickle cell, and so sickle cell is a hereditary blood disorder that predominantly affects our communities, being African and Caribbeans, and so with a condition like that, whereby you're constantly in and out of hospital, having a family member with the condition and going in and out, seeing how the healthcare professionals were looking after him and sort of taking care of us as well as a family, I thought this is the kind of impact that I want to have on other lives when I do become a doctor. So aside that, even going through school, I just loved science and maths. I loved communicating. I loved sort of taking on a bit of the leadership roles. And I just thought, okay, if I combine all these skills together and, that underlying reason, then becoming a doctor is definitely something that I want to do. So it's not the typical, African parents pressured you. No, it's genuinely something that I wanted to do.
And I think that's something that, through both, just speaking then, but also, reading up on the amazing things that you've done and the, speeches that you've done. And, like I said, the reading through your speaker page, it's very evident that, this passion has always been there. And you've been very passionate about, essentially, not only, I guess, the healthcare side of things of, administering care to others, but also, like the title of this episode is, empowering and inspiring individuals, which I think is something that, young people today I would say, I mean, young people have probably always needed it, but especially with everything that's happened in the last 2 years, even, this year alone, is something that young people always need. They always need individuals and organizations who go out of their way to empower them and,
Definitely.
ensure that representation is there. And yeah, no, thank you very much for that. And it's, like I said, it's very interesting to know a bit more about your journey into becoming a doctor. But we're now going to go on to the next question. Now, this question is all about, like we mentioned before, about, inspiring individuals. I just wanted to ask, why is it important to inspire aspiring medics, particularly those from Black or ethnic minority backgrounds?
Now, that's a really good question. I think, first of all, understanding, the current landscape of what our healthcare looks like for individuals who aren't necessarily in healthcare, wanting to seek advice, wanting to seek treatment. At the moment, yes, we pride ourselves in, the fact that our NHS is so diverse. But this is something that I always mention. The diversity isn't across the board. It's not at the top where, you have individuals that are supposed to make important decisions that will stop some of the sad things that we hear continuing to happen. For example, I'm sure you've heard of maternal mortality. Black women are more likely to die. With how, if you're Black, you're more likely to die with COVID-19. And so looking at the top is not that diverse. And also when you look amongst the medical workforce, it's also not diverse. And so when young individuals like myself, because I used to be in their position once, from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, lower socioeconomic homes, African and Caribbean backgrounds, going to state schools, when you are in environments whereby no one around you doesn't really necessarily aspire to become a doctor, or you just think that, okay, yeah, because of the color of your skin, that's something that you shouldn't even think about venturing into, or because of the fact that the teachers around you are sort of discouraging you from wanting to pursue some of those dreams. And I'm sure some of the listeners, or even maybe yourself, everyone has that one teacher that's like, yeah, no, you can't do it. And so with that being said, pairing the fact that, students have these sort of environmental factors, as well as this is what healthcare looks like, there's obviously a gap that we need to make sure we fix and bridge. And that's where inspiring and empowering aspiring medics from those particular environments, showing that there are people that look like you, who share the same background, who have overcome these odds, as to what people used to say in regards to them not making it, who are actually medical students, who are actually doctors, saving lives. And so if I can do it, then you can definitely do it as well. And we definitely need to make sure that what we went through, you don't go through the same. We need to ease that process for you.
That's so true. And I think it's important to know, like you said, that essentially, that's what life ideally should be about. Mm-hmm. Is, individuals go through certain experiences, whether this is something that, it's systemic, whether it's something that, unseen, like COVID. And it's all about, looking back and saying, okay, I went through this and this was tough, or, I went through this and this disadvantaged me. How can I ensure that individuals after me will never have to go through that same thing? And that's, how we see, businesses start up. That's how we see charities or projects that help to work in communities or address, a niche area. Though that's essentially what they do. They identify these regions or these, experiences and say, hey, look, how can we ensure that individuals don't have to go through that again? Right. And I think it's really interesting that you mentioned, Black maternal health, because that sort of links into what my, as our listeners may know, our MC of the month, got a bit ahead of myself there. Our mic check, where we put some important facts and figures that relate to today's episode. And for today's episode, we've got this interesting report that was done by Embrace, and it's essentially talking about, and I'm sure you must have heard of this, talking about the disparities in maternal mortality rates between women from Black and Asian ethnic groups compared with white women. And it was saying that Black and Asian women, particularly Black women, let me start off with Black women. Their maternal mortality rates are 4 times higher than their white counterparts. And for mixed race women or people of mixed ethnicity, it's 2 times higher, and it's almost twice as high for Asian women. And there are organizations like, for example, Birthrights, and we were lucky enough, in our previous season, to have someone from Birthrights on to, discuss this in more detail. But it's so true. But you need to inspire these individuals to show that whether they went through these experiences themselves, whether they went through they know a relative or a family friend who went through that, whether it's something that didn't happen to them but they heard that happened. It's very important to allow individuals to be empowered and to inspire them so they can help to whether it's coming up with effective solutions or better reporting or things like that, to ensure that communities and individuals, but especially those from Black and minority ethnic backgrounds, are essentially empowered, but also supported and kept safe.
Definitely. Even with the fact that you mentioned to come up with effective solutions in order to sort of get rid of these statistics. I'm sure going through the report, I'm sure you came across the part where they mentioned they're not really looking to do anything about it. They acknowledge that this statistic is there, but what we're going to do about it, nothing, which is definitely saddening. First of all, how do you even have the audacity to write, you're not going to do anything about this? And then just generally knowing that, okay, behind these facts and figures that we read, people are losing their loved ones. People are losing their mothers. These children that are just being born are losing their mothers just like that. And so it's so sad to hear, but I feel like we should never, ever lose sight or lose the fact that these are real humans.
No, that's so true. And I think even, I've, like, with my expertise is in environmental science. So even looking at that from like a climate change point of view is something that we, both in class, but also as an individual, I think about, because, it's almost coming up to a year that like COP26 happened, and all these countries were just like, yes, climate change, we all agree is real. COP27 is coming up, and people are just like, well, okay, let's think about it from essentially the UK point of view and be like, how have we as the UK ensured that, we're saying that these are the facts. Individuals are going to get affected, life is going to be tough for everyone. And it's just like, how are we, we know this is happening. We know this is something we can stop, but are we actually working towards it? Are we actually stopping it? And I think it's kind of like what you said. It's, we had this really interesting episode on turning climate anxiety into climate action. And one of the things that really came out of that episode was we wanted, the person that we had speaking then, Anchor, he was saying that, it's all about not letting yourself, feel like nothing can be done. Whether it's with, this report that we discussed and the facts raised there, whether it's with, other facts, other topics, there's a whole, especially for people from Black and ethnic minority backgrounds, there's a lot that can go on that can make life feel a lot stressful. But it's about, not thinking that, this is what it's going to stay like, coming up, like we said, about effective solutions, effective ways that we can solve this issue. Because that's essentially what business is at the end of the day. It's, not letting things stay the same. And, even to, I'll end on this point of even, if you look at technology, technology, for example, is something that I'm sure every individual can clearly see how things are changing. And just in the same way that, technology is always being updated to make it faster or to make, screen quality better and things like that, is the same way that other fields need to, whether it comes to healthcare and ensuring that, there's a better understanding of how certain health conditions can look in children who aren't necessarily white, even if in the textbooks it shows that, this is what, a certain illness or a certain disease could look like in a white child. This is what it would look like in a Black child, for example. Exactly. Things like that allow us to essentially ensure, like what you were saying, that, future generations are protected and in a position where, they can enjoy life and not go through the things that we had to go through ourselves.
Yeah, so right.
Oh, thank you. But yeah, we're not going to go into our next question, which is, again, a bit more about you. So, you mentioned in your introduction that, actually, before I ask the question, I definitely agree with you. And I should have probably said it then, that, introductions are one of those things where you're just like, I don't know how much I should dive, I should dive into about myself. And you're just like, I don't want to, just be like letting, especially I think that was one of the things that, during interviews as well, when they're just like,
Yeah.
oh, tell me a bit about yourself. You're just like, oh, how much should I go into? And you're just like, I don't want to
Right.
just like run off. I don't want to be like going on forever.
It's so true.
But no,
It's
you did
so
a
true.
perfect introduction. You did a perfect introduction.
I try. It's so much. I feel like for me personally, this is slightly off topic, but just introducing yourself in written form, yeah, hands down, I can do that. But in person, I don't know, it's just something about speaking about yourself and saying you are XYZ. That's just a bit. But I feel like people need to stop shying away from, owning who you are and what you do. So yeah, that's just a little side thing.
No, it's definitely very important. And I think, like you said, it's always being, not afraid. You shouldn't be afraid to talk about, the achievements that you've done or the things that you've done, because, ultimately that's you, that's a part of you. That's the things that you set out to do. And I guess that nicely, leads on to our next question, which is all about, things that you've set up. So you mentioned, in your introduction that you started the Like Her project, and I guess it is sort of like a two-parter. So, first we'd just like to know a bit more about that project, but also we'd like to know what motivated you to start that project as well.
Yeah, sure. I just love it so much. So I was born and bred here in the UK, but my parents are from Ghana, and I just love Ghana so much. And honestly, I have to give it up to my mum for just ingraining that in us over the years. Like, we would always go back in the summer holidays, and I had a period of time where I didn't go back at all, of course, with medical school. So in my final year of medical school, I just finished my exams, and I thought, okay, this is my chance to do something. I've always had that underlying feeling of, I do so much in the UK for young people, especially those who want to get into medicine, so the Aspire Medics. But I want to do something for young people back home. Like, that would just make it, life will become so much more meaningful and more purposeful if I can impart some knowledge, inspire and instill hope in young people back home in Ghana. So after my exams, I thought, okay, similar to the outreach that I do here in schools across the UK, I want to try something like that back home. So there was this young girl that was following me on Instagram who does quite a bit of charity school stuff. And I messaged her to be like, listen, please, I'm coming to Ghana. Give me a school, about 100 girls. Let's go. Let's do something. Just on a whim. Obviously, I didn't even have a proper plan in my head at the time. I just thought, give me a bunch of young girls in one room. Let's do something. So I went to Ghana. And usually after you finish medical school, you have to do like an elective. So you spend a few weeks in a hospital around the world, wherever you want to go, and just see how they do medicine, how healthcare is set up in that country. So after I was done with those 3 weeks there, I had a bit of time remaining for my trip in Ghana, and it was just to prepare for what I was going to do. And essentially, it's called the Like Her project because it's encouraging young females to dream like her, think like her, work like her, and the her in question being any phenomenal woman that they aspire to be like. And sometimes as a young woman back home in Ghana, you may not even have that woman or the person that you think, yeah, wow, I want to be like her. And that's why the volunteers who then deliver the session are perfect starting points as to individuals that you can look up to. So I thought, okay, Like Her is a concept. What am I going to tell these kids? So we split into 3 sort of sections, whereby I wanted to make sure that their health is definitely a priority. And myself, I'm a doctor. I definitely want to make sure that these girls are looking after themselves and maintaining good health. So especially being with menstrual hygiene and just female hygiene in general. And then also this year, actually, we incorporated consent. Then secondly, in regards to educating them on skills that are necessarily not seen as important for women back home. For example, communication, public speaking skills. So the second section of the workshop is basically all things communication. We do a little public speaking exercises for the young girls. And honestly, the confidence that they have is so beautiful to watch. And lastly, it's about being empowered. So knowing that no one is like you, knowing that you are the only one that is, of course, like yourself and has the power within. You can be anything you want to be. And we end off with a lovely sort of positive affirmation sort of mantra that we all say together, which is very, very beautiful. So last year we engaged with 100 girls. And of course, as much as I want to talk, I want to give them something. So we donated sanitary pads, educational materials, pens, pencils, so many things for the girls. And it was lovely to see. And I was actually just in Ghana about 2 months ago. We went again. I said, yeah, okay, this one went really well. But if I'm going to come back, I need to go bigger and better. So I was like, yeah, 300 girls. Let's go. 300 girls, 2 schools, different areas across Ghana, because I wanted to expand the reach. And we hit our targets. I mean, the second school, usually we ask for 100 girls. This school thought, yeah, let's just give her all the girls in the whole school. I was like, oh my gosh. I think we're still struggling with the number. I think either 300 to 400 girls in one large room. Bear in mind, my target, especially in regards to the donation items, is 300 girls. I've already given 100 away to the other school, meaning I've got about 150, 200 left. And you've given me more girls than I have items for, which stressed me out a bit. But I thought, you know what? The most important part is the knowledge that I'm imparting on these girls. So a few girls did sadly miss out, but we're going to come back and do more and more. So that's basically the Like Her project at the moment. Next year, things are going to, of course, pick up. Exciting things are on the way, which is keeping me very, very busy. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Honestly, that's a really inspiring story. And it is, I think, kind of like what you said, is always great to give back to your community, whether that's your local community, like you said, in the UK, in London, or whether that's your community back home. And I think that that's something that is so powerful. Like what you said, you're essentially not only letting people know about what they can do. There's no limit to what they can do, which I think is always powerful for especially for young people. The younger that people hear that there is no limit to who you want to be or what you can do, it's so powerful. But also the fact that you're going out and you're like you said, you're giving them products that they might not necessarily have, or they might not necessarily have access to. And it's like I said, it's really amazing to see that this is something that you're doing, and to see the amazing work that you guys do. And I wish you all the best with your next one.
Thank you very much.
I definitely. No, you're very welcome. And honestly, I think that projects like this are very, very impactful, and that's one of the reasons why I love Pick Up the Mic and the stuff that we do, because getting to hear about these projects, it's not necessarily something that I would hear of, or I might necessarily hear of as easily as if I didn't do it. But like I said, it's always inspiring to see that individuals are out there, and it's one of the I guess going a bit on a tangent. It's one of the things that as Pick Up the Mic that we love doing, is we love saying that there are amazing projects out there that you might not necessarily know about, or you might not necessarily know how to get involved with or how to help with. But it's just hearing these stories. It's always very impactful, and always shows the amazing work that an individual can do. Thank you very much for that.
And even just off of that, I think none of this work is done just alone. Like this year, we had volunteers help, in addition to my core team, and even in regards to the items that we gave to the student for this particular year, I thought, okay, the first year it was self-funded. This year, if I want to do 300 plus girls, I can't do it on my own. So I did a whole fundraiser, and we raised about £1,000, which was more than I had hoped. And honestly, whoever's listening, whoever was a donor, whoever supported, even if you didn't donate, just shared anything at all, any input whatsoever, I am so, so grateful, because without them, we wouldn't have been able to do that.
This honestly, the support that individuals can do to projects is always important. And I guess a quick shout out even to our Patreon members, because I know that without you guys we wouldn't be able to do what we do. So huge shout out to you. And whether like well, like we said here, that whether you're sharing, you're liking, you're reposting, you're putting it in your story, all that work is hugely appreciated. But yeah, we're going to go on to the next question now, and this question is for our aspiring medics out there.
Yeah.
And they might be thinking, this is really great. All this conversation it's been inspiring to them. It's to show them, what they can do, the amazing things that an individual can do. And they might just be thinking, what is one key piece of advice that I need? So we'd like to ask you, what's one, and I know sometimes asking one bit of advice, it can be tough. But if possible, what would be, your best advice, your one key advice that you think that aspiring medics need to know?
This is tough because you're only giving me one piece of advice I can give. Okay, I'm gonna actually just, it doesn't even apply to just aspiring medics. I think just generally to perhaps your younger self or just to younger people in general. I think my one piece of advice is to keep going. And I feel like over the years, especially more recently, I feel like the words keep going apply more and more and more. For the reason that, well, as an aspiring medic, to get into medical school, it is tough. It is very competitive. And so you need all the support you can get. And it can be quite lonely or isolating, knowing that you have to go through having to write not just a personal statement, but entrance examinations. And there's 2 of them that you might have to do. Then you've got to face the early UCAS deadline. Then you've got interviews that medical schools want to do. All of these sort of hurdles that not necessarily your friends or other students may have to go through if they're applying for other degrees. And so you have to keep telling yourself, especially at a young age, you need to keep going. But just generally, in the world where social media is becoming or is huge, the influence is massive. I think young people are more susceptible to fall into those pressures. And so I feel like the words keep going definitely applies there as well. Everybody is there on their own path. You might be an aspiring medic, but you might not get even into medical school straight away from sixth form. So many routes. Individuals might either do a degree, then go into medical school. Somebody might take a gap year, then get in. Somebody might go straight away. Everybody has their own individual path of life. And there's beauty in sort of the diverse nature in which everybody leads their life. And so I think we shouldn't succumb to those pressures. Just know that you are doing amazing. You can do it. Just keep going.
That is so true. And I think it's kind of like what you said, that, it's funny that you mentioned, that even for, whether you're aspiring medic or you're just someone who's, got a passion and you're trying to follow it, that there's a different journey because, we've had quite a few episodes on, healthcare, and we've had, different types of healthcare professionals on there. And like you said, they've all had different experiences. They've all had different journeys of, whether it's going to medical school or, going to a job within the healthcare industry. And it's kind of like what you mentioned, that, there's beauty to everyone's story. Not everyone's story is the same. And it's the same, like you said, with regular life, with everyone else, there is always that beauty. There's always that, story. And I think it's very important to know that, or important to say that, there's no one else's story that you can tell better than essentially your own story.
Exactly.
Which I guess kind of nicely links back to what I said, I can't do the introductions because I can't do the passion. I can't say, I can read out a piece of paper. I can do it to the best of my ability and say, this is really important or this is really cool in the person's backstory, but it will never do the person justice because that's their story. That's who they are. And you as an individual, whether you are someone who, you want to start a business or you want to start a project or you want to, get into a career or a field or whatever, it is kind of like what we said here. It's all about, keep on going, keep trying at it, keep doing it, be prepared to fail, but also don't think that that's a bad thing. Learn lessons and things like that. And I think, like, one important thing before we go into the next question is, it is important, like you mentioned, that social media can sometimes get rid of that step. It sometimes seems like the individual, just, wanted a project or wanted to start a business, and then, 6 months or like 2 years later, they were successful.
Yeah.
And it's just like, no, actually, this individual was, working late every night trying to do projects, or, they spent, they got rejected from like 13 applications for funding and stuff like that. And I think that's what I think is important of, whether it's, established people in their industries, or people, going up in their industries, that it's very important to say that, oh yeah, like, I failed like many a times, or like, oh, things were not as easy as I made it seem. Because that is essentially what makes, that's what inspires someone to be like, oh, this person didn't have it easy. And, they have a similar background to me. They might, be from, the same area as me. And I know that, they went through this, but actually the fact that they were able to do it means that I can. It's not like some unachievable goal, or, oh, I have to have everything lined up perfectly before I can even, take the first step. It's no, you can take the first step. You can see where things go. You can try things. Things sometimes work, sometimes they don't. But it's always like what you said about keeping on going and, keep on moving, and you'll just see the amazing things that you can do, and that's always the most important thing.
Definitely, for sure.